autism, as well as ADHD. As a first grader, Zach found the school environment to be so overwhelming that he had frequent panic attacks, violent outbursts, and often ran from the classroom. Prior to moving to DeKalb 3 years ago, Zach attended a variety of schools that struggled to meet his needs. These schools also failed to protect him from terrible bullying Zach experienced at the hands of his classmates. However, in spite of all this adversity, Zach persevered and wouldn't let the bullies keep him down. Today, Zach is a straight-A student, has a popular fan page on Facebook that he uses to offer advice to his peers, and is seen as a leader to both his peers and classmates. Zach Green has begun writing a book on his life and the lessons he's learned. Please help me welcome Zachary King.
Thank you very, very much for that introduction. And now, I would like to ask a couple of favors from all of you. First off, I would like you to think of your happiest memory throughout your whole school life. Take a few moments. Okay, now I want you to think of your saddest memories. Can you all do that? Well, for me, school was filled with mainly sad memories. But I didn't have a lot of happy memories, that's for sure. But my story is one we all have. We all have a story of our lives, and I'm going to get started on that. My story begins simply. I am a human being, just like you. I have strengths, I have weaknesses. Part of being human is being flawed, and as such, I have learned to deal with those flaws. Some of my flaws, however, have labels to describe them, namely Asperger's syndrome and ADHD. Over time, I have learned more and more about what these labels mean for me. Now let me explain. Asperger's is often seen as a milder form of classical autism, with similar symptoms, the most obvious of which is difficulty understanding how to socialize with others. Then there's ADHD, which means attention deficit hyperactive disorder. The main characteristics that people with ADHD have in common are trouble focusing, controlling their impulses, and hyperactivity, which leaves us feeling like we always have to be doing something. My form of ADHD is mainly internal, in that I have trouble focusing when I'm off medication, and since I'm one who likes to focus on the tasks at hand, it often exhausts me. My brothers are very impulsive, bouncing off the walls when they're off their medication, whereas I am sometimes impulsive, but I mainly just scattered in the head, hence the term scatterbrain. Well, we didn't learn about my ADHD until this past summer, when I wasn't focusing while out driving. Before then, I came home exhausted each day from having exerted so much effort to focus at school. Since beginning a special ADHD medication, I can say I'm doing a lot better now. My life has really been a journey. There are people with disabilities that have grown to be extremely successful people, and I'm shooting to be one such person. What I'd really like is to be seen not as a disabled person, but as a human being with just as much worth in this world as you have, and to have the same opportunities that everyone else has. I've worked harder than you can imagine to get where I am today. But I am driven and I love a challenge. Even now, standing in front of you is a nerve-wracking experience. As you can see, I'm trembling a bit. I can, however, say that it is a pleasure being able to do so, and I really mean that, as you get to join me in a chapter of my story. Before I continue, I'd like to ask you something. Do my challenges really make me less of a person? Do I have lesser value than you? Are you and I really so different? You can nod your heads if you wish a response. Ready? Now back to my story. When I was much younger, I did unusual things that my family now know are characteristic of Asperger's, particularly my large vocabulary and formal way of speaking, which every now and then confuses people I interact with. But things really became difficult soon after I started first grade. That time in my life can only be described for me as living hell. I had frequent panic attacks that led to hitting, kicking, screaming, and on more than one occasion I would run from the room. My Asperger's was more severe when I was younger, but has become less so as I have learned new strategies to cope with and to overcome these challenges. One of the main reasons I became so enraged as a youngster was because my need for structure in a daily routine was violated in some way. I was and still am to some extent a timekeeper. I'm always watching my clock, watching the time, wanting things to start and stop exactly as intended, and panicking whenever anything was a smidge off the mark. I would run everywhere I could, trying to get away from the ones I deemed my captors, and I would bolt out of the classroom to evade them. This went on and on until it was a daily cycle at the elementary school. Teachers, they just didn't get it. They just thought it was a behavior issue, but in actuality, it was me not being able to cope with what was going on all around me in my school. They just thought it was a behavior issue. I felt so confused and so alone because no one could help me. They only seemed to want to make things worse for me. I was so enraged that I had trouble forming words, causing me to retreat into the darkness of my mind. I was just so lost in that time. I was so lost and I feared I'd never be able to find out my issues or find a way back to my own sanity. My first grade teacher eventually called up my father and said that she thought I had autism and suggested I get tested. When that event finally came around, lo and behold, I had Asperger's syndrome. My family was quite a stranger to that diagnosis, and at the time, my dad, recognizing many of the same symptoms in himself, got himself tested and found out he was Asperger's himself. My two younger brothers would turn out to have this in ADHD as well, thus appearing to us as a genetic trait, but the science doesn't matter. What does matter is I had just gotten a label slapped upon my forehead, and I had no idea what to make of it as I was just 6 years old and still very naive at the time. I spent a lot of my time trapped inside my own mind thinking, what is wrong with me? Only now do I realize that there is nothing wrong with me and that Asperger's is just another piece of the puzzle that is me. But back to the point, the diagnosis didn't help me in terms of school because the teacher just wanted to correct what they thought was a behavior problem still. And that clashed with my already frightened and unstable state of mind. My outbursts just kept going and going with more frequency and more severity. The teachers soon began to place their problem solving in physical ways, which mainly was restraining me. To me, they were just plain idiots. Because not only were they not willing to understand me, I felt so lost, so helpless, so fragile with my arms and legs unmovable. I was in such a dark place, and every day I was there. Because I got so worked up that speaking became an issue, further isolating me from the students and teachers alike. One thing that carried on from the experience of my first 2 elementary school years was the negativity that had manifested with how lost I was inside of myself. I felt like a freak because people were seeing the monster that I felt was me. Because I was angry more than I was calm and happy. Like I was destined to be a monster for the rest of my seemingly hellish existence. Eventually, my father removed me from my first grade and proceeded to homeschool me till halfway through my 2nd grade, where we found out I was ahead of the other kids, surprisingly. We decided to give me another chance in the public school system at the same school in 2nd grade, but we soon realized that we made a big mistake. I was looking forward to going back at first, but then anxiety took over. I remembered the horrors of my 1st grade, and I kept beating myself over it, wondering whether or not it would happen all again, and thus I became the catalyst for the experiences I dreaded. I began to rage once more, and eventually I remember after the return of the restraints that I was placed into a small room with other kids with a teacher guarding the door so I couldn't escape. I had a tutor in there to help me out, but her trying to force me to write when I was irritated only drove me over the edge that much quicker. During the day, I would hop on the little trampoline in there waiting for the door guarder to believe I'd calmed down. Then I would pull through the door. There were times I didn't get out, but there were other times that I did. And when I did, I would try and run as far as I could, as fast as I could, but I would never leave the building due to my respecting of rules and not wanting the cops on my tail naturally. It was just a cycle of fleeing and being recaptured that seemed unbreakable to me. I think that I found my 2nd grade to be worse than my 1st, particularly being in that small classroom trapped with nowhere to go. Eventually, my father took me out again, and that was the end of my elementary school journey, to my relief. However, I still felt like a freak, worried that I was seen as someone different because of my fits and I was going to get yelled at by those I loved. I then learned that this was not going to be the last time I was entered into and pulled out of the school. I went to another school that was a correctional behavior school, as we found out, and I saw kids having similar outbursts and being restrained similarly to me, which was a day job Boone to me in many ways. Eventually, I started up again with the fits and I was taken out of there. After my parents' divorce, it was sent me into a rage towards my mother and many others for a few months. I moved back to my dad's hometown and went to a private school for special needs kids. And although I had fits for the first few months there as a result of the divorce and the dysregulation that the divorce caused me, I found that this school was actually helping me, and it helped me to control myself and better refine my skills. You guys follow me so far? Okay, good. Soon we started working into transitioning me back to the public school system and middle school. As the transition was happening, I was excited beyond belief at being able to walk among the kids in a normal school, possibly even be seen as a normal kid. I got teachers who were nice and could help me with whatever I needed when it came to my schoolwork. And I got the academic challenges I so desired because I was at a school where kids with mainly learning disabilities, not social disabilities. But I soon found that I faced a new problem in the school system, and it wasn't the teachers this time, it was the kids. I found that I was being verbally and emotionally bullied at every turn, in hallways, lunch, and even in the classroom. Just a sec. It verged from little remarks to embarrassment, all the usual verbal bullying one might expect. I am willing to bet a lot of you have been bullied before, if not bullied now. Am I right? Yeah, I remember that feeling very much. I'm a very sensitive young man, and still am. And back then, I was a very vulnerable and negative kid. The bullying was a combination of little insults that built up over time as I convinced myself I had to take it in and be strong. I thought I was weak if I ever had to ask for help and that I had to be independent as best I could, so I took it all in. I found that it was slowly eating me up, consuming and controlling my every thought, beating me up internally, having me tell myself that I was worthless and that I did not deserve to live. I retreated back further into myself and became an emotionless robot, which left me open to more ridicule. This took place all through my 7th grade, halfway into 8th grade, then I finally broke. It was my brother's birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese's, and while I was setting down all the pain of bullying at the middle school, as well as previous cases, and all the troubles that I had as a kid, Sucker punched me in the face all at once. I began to cry to my mother, telling her that I wanted to die, that I did not want to go back to school. I really didn't want to go back. She tried to cover me. I called my dad up and told him all that was bothering me. He told me if I did the last 2 days before winter break, he'd take me out for good. I was so relieved. But I was also scared out of my mind because I had to go back there and resist the bullying I feared would happen, which was a result of me working myself up on that. That following Monday, I told the teachers I was leaving, and they were sad to see me go, as was I, but I didn't think I could handle the bullying anymore, and I was right. I was so scared and emotionally fragile that day. Come my 4th class of the day, I had to get my folder out of the class bin, and when I told a kid who bullied me a few times to please move so I could get my stuff, he launched another random insult at me. That was the final straw for me. I went to the counselor saying I wanted to die. I was even asking for a knife, and it definitely scared them. And it scared me as well. She promptly called my father, and he took me out of there for good. I was glad to be out of there, but I still had my negative mindset to overcome because it had basically integrated itself into me throughout the bullying. I spent the rest of 8th grade homeschooled, and we moved near the end of that school year to where I currently live in DeKalb. I found out that high school in the town would accept me, and I decided to give it a shot. Because it was a new experience, and these were new people. So that decision marks when I really started to become who I am now. I was a stubborn child, and I still am. And I had convinced myself that I had to be independent. Only now have I realized that success doesn't always come single-handedly, but by forming connections and partnerships with those we want to, with those who want help, who share similar passions, And that's part of how I got here today. Through the support of my friends and of my family. My success is built upon many failures, but hey, what's success without something and falling along the way? As I entered high school, my mindset began to change, and I began to look at myself in a more positive light. The benefit to this is that I have learned and taught myself that giving up my dreams and goals gets nothing accomplished, but that moving myself forward does achieve what I want to achieve. I tell myself and therefore convince myself that I am a valuable human being with value to share amongst my peers, and that's how I'm able to stay positive and resilient. I found through my journey into and through freshman year that positivity is obtainable, but it requires a lot of effort and belief in your own abilities to succeed. That was one of my major roadblocks, putting down my abilities. As I became more confident, I began to trust my abilities more and more, and in doing so, accept the flaws inherent in me, inherent in all of us. And that is how I overcame the negativity of bullying, as I simply began to tell myself that what they were saying about me was not true, and that the only way it could be true is if I decided to believe it, which I refuse to anymore. Now, I'm in my high school years, which I'm currently living right now. My freshman year was basically recovery mode from 8th grade for me. I faced some bullying, but not as intense as the previous year. I found I enjoyed this high school and kept on going to sophomore year, and that's when I really began to change. I noticed that a lot of the negativity I've been experiencing also plagued my new friends like it did me, and I found a natural urge to want to help them. And I started devoting a lot of my time to offering my help to my friends wherever I could, and I found to my astonishment that it was working and that I was actually doing something good and positive for a change. I began actively befriending more and more people at my high school, becoming more socially adept, and I found I enjoyed having friends to engage with. Then I realized I wanted to help more people, including ones I didn't know, and then I began brainstorming ideas to do just that. During a conversation with my dad over wanting to help people, I thought that I should begin an inspirational Facebook page to share my story and help others out with advice and my experiences. When I was looking for a name, the thought hit me on the head just like all my other ideas of helping people, and I decided to name the page Zaspy, short for Zach and Aspie. I started up soon after that, and as of now, it's almost at 600 likes, something I didn't originally think I could get to single-handedly. I found that running this page was the key to getting rid of my negative thoughts. By helping others and getting feedback, I noticed that I slowly became more confident in my abilities as a person, and that I was becoming the inspirational figure that I wanted to be. I still run the page now, and I'm more determined than ever to get through the school years and help people however I can. This journey that has been and is still being written has led me from a lost, out of control perspective to a clear, peaceful state of mind in which I am more determined than I ever have been to succeed in life, and in doing so, grab it by the horns and ride it to wherever it may lead me. The story will have an end, but when it does end, its impact will surely remain on all of those who have journeyed with me, including all of you. For I intend to leave a legacy behind that will be remembered long after I'm gone. This story was shared not just because I wanted to share it, but because I wish for each and every one of you to be able to take charge of your own journeys. I want you all to be able to see that because I can make it through all that I have gone through, that you all can do the same. I'm currently writing a book about my story and my perspectives on leadership, due for release hopefully this year. I had already started. And I also plan to venture into public speaking further than this. This is my second time public speaking. To hone my skills in this area and be a more positive person and inspirational figure. I thank you all for taking the time to let me talk to you, and I hope you grab useful insight out of the story. I'm truly grateful that I have this wonderful audience ready to listen to me, and to be able to see in front of them that this is not simply a disabled person in front of them, but another human with the strength and determination and perseverance at the helm of his resolve. I thank you all for being here to hear my story. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all very much. My name is Brian King, and I am Zachary's very proud father. I know he just threw a lot at you in a very short amount of time, and we want to give you the benefit of being able to ask him additional questions, because the best use of your time today is going to be derived from being able to take some of the advice he planted for you and being able to use it. Because one thing I'm sure that you heard from your teachers repeatedly is that knowledge is not power. Knowledge applied is power. So if you can't use this, it can't impact your life. So do you have any questions based on what Zachary shared with you?
Yes. I've been bullied all my life. So I was trying to ask, is there a way to cope with it?
Okay, she said she's been bullied her whole life and she's looking for ways to cope with it. What are you doing now?
Pretty much trying to focus on my schoolwork, focusing on my family, not dealing with the bullies.
And do you want to answer that, and then I'll add something to it?
Yeah. First, what is the most important to you? What others think of you, or what you think of you?
I think about me, because mostly I think about other people as themselves, and I think about me as myself also, because no one can tell me what I am and what I am not.
You're right, no one can tell you that.
So she's decided that nobody can tell her who she is. She needs to decide that for herself. Anything else you want to say?
I'd say if you are to focus on other people's opinions, focus on your friends' opinions of you, and combine that with your own to reinforce what you know is true about yourself.
Let's be very direct, shall we? You ever go grocery shopping?
With my mom and sometimes.
With your mom sometimes? Thank you for being helpful. I'm sure she appreciates that.
Yeah.
When you go shopping, do you look for all the food you ate?
No.
Did you say, Mom, that looks like it's going to make me throw up. Can you make that for dinner time, please? What do you pick off the shelf?
I pick out different things because my mom's boyfriend will cook different things.
Your mom's boyfriend cooks different things. Good man.
Yeah.
So you pick the things off the shelf that are good. They're going to make you feel good. They're going to make you healthy. Are we catching on here? When you have the option to pick and choose what you let inside yourself, do you often talk back to your mom and say, Mom, I don't have to do what you say. I don't have to listen to you.
No.
Never, ever?
Sometimes.
How old are you? 17. Anybody else do that? Talk back? I have listened, Mom. Thank you for your honesty. Okay? If you can do that with your folks, you can do it with your peers. Okay? The reality is this. Like grocery shopping, like choosing to listen or not listen, we decide what we let in. We decide what we can use. How many of you buy clothes that are way too small for you? Right? Some of you. Okay? That
Probably explains the painful look on your face. Mike died? The mic just quit. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay? The batteries quit, so I have to use my outdoor voice. So the point I was essentially making is that you choose what goes into you. You can choose to say, your opinion is not something I can use. When somebody's bullying you, all they're showing you is that this is the worst I have to offer. Of all the things,
is this one gooder than the other one? It's a private joke, Marley.
Sounds like it.
The point being, you can listen or not listen to anyone and say, your opinion has no use for me. Because I've decided that I'm going to focus on the things that help me feel happy, that help me feel good about myself. You have decided not to do that for me. So you are disqualified from being someone I choose to listen to. That's one of the things you do with verbal bullying. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Zach?
How can I control my ADHD and bipolar and Asperger's better? Is there any way that I can control them better?
How do you control your bipolar, Asperger's, and ADHD better? Any suggestions on that?
Well, I use medication for my ADHD, and that
I use medication for my ADHD and it helps tremendously. But in terms of like the Asperger's, you develop the skills to cope with that over time, like engaging in social conversation, engaging in social activities overall, and learning your limits and things like that. That's how I learned to cope with the Asperger's. I'm not too sure about the bipolar, but I know that you can definitely find ways to cope with that. I know that you can definitely look stuff up.
I have ADHD, dyslexia, and strong Aspergerian tendencies. One thing you need to decide before picking your tools is what outcome you want. You know what your experience is now. ADHD can make you impulsive, difficulty focusing, difficulty with SCAD. Asperger's can make it difficult to socialize with people. Bipolar makes it difficult to control your mood. So my guess is your head is filled with what you don't want, right? What you need to decide is what you do want. Same as grocery shopping. If you don't know what the boyfriend's going to make for dinner, you don't know what ingredients about, right? So when you decide what you want to feel instead, then you know what tools to look for to help you get there. So first you need to make that decision, okay? Any other questions? Another one?
No, it's not a question. It's for the bipolar.
It's towards the bipolar. Should I give you the mic?
Yeah.
Welcome, what's her name?
I also have bipolar disorder and ADHD. The way I treat those two is by taking some medicine. Because I take like tons of different medicine. I'm not going to say all of them. So the best.
Pronounce them anyway, right?
Well, it's kind of hard to pronounce them actually.
Medicine, there are different kinds of medicine that work different.
Yeah.
Is that medications are one tool in the toolbox. Once they get you to the point where you feel less anxious, less overwhelmed, your mind is clearer, that is your opportunity. When your mind is clear, that's when you can start putting the tools in to help you be much more resilient, more resourceful, more confident. If the problem has not gone away because you took a pill, guess what? It's not supposed to. That just opens a new door to you. So think of medication that way, okay? How are we on time? Somebody must have been watching.
There's a clock right there.
Are we okay? We're done? Okay. It's been a pleasure. Thank you all very much again. Hope you have an awesome day.
So much. It's been a pleasure.
Keep filming?
Yeah. Well, okay, you can turn it off.